Welcome to the Lean Out Your Business podcast, a show dedicated to helping entrepreneurs accelerate business growth and simplify success. I'm your host, Krista Grasso, and I've been working with businesses for more than 2 decades to help them lean out and optimize what's working while eliminating anything that's not adding value. So if you are ready to get more time back in your day, more profit in your business, and to do business differently, growing and scaling on your terms, let's dive into today's episode. Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Lean Out Your Business podcast. Today, we're going to be talking about scaling through the messy middle. And if you are in the messy middle, you will recognize some of the symptoms that I am about to share. If you're not sure if you're in the messy middle, you will have clarity by the end of today's episode. But not only am I going to walk you through what that looks like, but I want to share a couple of the myths and a couple of the things that keep people stuck there longer than they expect to. So, first things first, I want to define for you what I consider the messy middle to be. Now, I know there's a book by this name, I think. I've never actually read it, probably should. But that being said, this term has just always struck me as something that so perfectly describes what it feels like when you're scaling your business from what is typically multi-6 to multi-7 figures. Now, it's not an exact dollar amount per se, it's more characteristics. But that being said, that's where I find it tends to hit a small online business in the coaching, consulting, or service-based space. And so to me, the messy middle is that very complex and chaotic stage where the business is growing, but you have not yet reached the level of stability, predictability, profitability that you really need as a truly scalable company. So it's almost like the tween years of scaling, right? It's a little bit awkward. You're kind of trying to figure things out as you go along. Some things work really well, some things really don't. Things are working and then all of a sudden they stop working. You're reinventing, you're trying to optimize, but you're not quite sure if you're optimizing the right things. You're trying to hire, but you're not entirely sure yet exactly how to hire or even maybe how to lead the people that you've hired. And so it's just this awkward period where you're learning and you're seeing results. It's not that there's not results in the business. It's just that you expected those results to produce something different. You expected to actually be able to get yourself out of the day to day, and you're finding you're more stuck in it. You expected to be able to get more time back to focus on the things that you love to do, and it doesn't feel like you can get there. Your to-do list just keeps growing no matter what you finish. You expected that your profitability would go up. You'd be able to reinvest back in the business much more, and you might even be finding that you're struggling to make payroll some months because things can be a bit of a roller coaster and inconsistent. And so this is the messy middle. And the thing that is a little bit unfortunate but true is that every business does experience it. That being said, how you experience it can look different. And I will say the very first company that I scaled back in, I've had brick and mortar businesses and I've had a lot of different businesses. But if I think about the business that looks today most similar to the business that I have, in the sense that it was an online business, it was something that I was trying to scale very big beyond 7 figures. And if I think about that journey, it was the messiest of messy middles. And I talk about this a lot on my newsletter, and I've talked about it on the podcast before, where I literally almost scaled myself out of business. I put myself in burnout. I racked up massive debt. And so it was a period where, on the outside looking in, we were super successful. I'm getting comments from everyone like, we see you everywhere. And that was one of my problems. I was trying to be everywhere and do everything all at once, which, learn the hard way. Lean out method was born. But that being said, there were all of these different things that were going on where I was getting comments from people about seeing me everywhere, about wondering what I'm doing, and them wanting insight into what's working so well for me. Meanwhile, feeling a little bit like a fraud because I'm like, yeah, we're selling more, we're everywhere, and I can barely keep up with the expenses. I just have more and more that I need to do. Sometimes I'm not even sure how I'm delivering the things I'm delivering. And so that was the messiest of messy middles for me. And in hindsight, I'm so grateful for that experience because that it actually pushed me so far to the edge that I had to figure out a different way of operating. That was where the lean out method was born as a business. That was where the simplify to scale system was born, which is what I train and certify people on, what I do when I go into companies and do work with them as a done for you service, right? It ended up being the catalyst for so much of what I do today. Whereas at the time, I was just trying to save my business and get some semblance of time back and not be so overwhelmed and so stressed out all the time and to not keep accumulating new debts. And so that was, again, my first experience scaling a business. Now, when I scale businesses, it looks really different, right? With Strategic Ops Institute being a new business, it's a new division of Lean Out Method, but I treat it as its own business, as its own entity. And I will be scaling that to seven figures within the first 3 years. I'll probably get there sooner based on my projections, but right now I'm intentionally not trying to put so much pressure on myself because my goal is to create the best possible experience for the students who are going through and getting certified, for those who either want to become scalable ops managers or chief strategy and operating officers. So those are the two core certifications I have right now, and I want to pour into making those the absolute best experiences possible, making sure that those who go through it are getting set up for success to either support the businesses they work for or to grow and scale their own business as they're doing that for their clients. And so I've given myself a pretty reasonable time frame to hit my first seven figures. And it's really less about the money, more about impact numbers. I have certain numbers of people that I want to be working with and such, which is what drove that. But that being said, I'm still going to hit the messy middle. Despite everything I've known, despite the decades between those experiences, I will absolutely hit the messy middle. I'm actually getting pretty close to the messy middle right now. But that being said, I'm going to move through it a lot quicker. The messy middle is going to be a whole lot less messy. So you can make the messy middle a whole lot less messy. You can move through it a whole lot more quickly. You can move through it in a more simple, streamlined way. You can move through it in a way where you're not working 100 hours a week or you're not struggling to make payroll every single month, right? And so there's definitely things that you can do to simplify things, streamline things. So, what I want to do in today's episode is really dive into and help you understand the characteristics of the messy middle. And then we'll talk a little bit about what to do to move through it. But the first one, which I consider a little bit of a scaling trap, something that keeps you stuck in the messy middle longer than you need to, is not actually recognizing that you're in the messy middle or knowing what it is or isn't. So I gave you the definition of it, but let me give you a few of the characteristics and some of the things that most people experience when they're in this stage. The first one is that you feel like you've had some success. You feel like you've had revenue growth. And even if, because I know the market is really tough right now, even if you might be in a little bit of a plateau place or even going a little backwards, hopefully you're not. But regardless, you've had success and you've had growth. You know that what you do works. You're just in a period of trying to refine to get it to keep working again. So as long as you've had success and revenue growth, that is the first step. But what you typically see on the other side of that when you're in the messy middle is struggling with cash flow and having profit margins that are relatively low for where they should be or shrinking. In other words, your expenses are frequently going up quicker than your revenue is coming in. And if you are so busy, which a lot of people are in the messy middle, you don't always know it. You don't always pinpoint it. You aren't always looking at your numbers at such a level of detail that you even notice it. You feel it before you analytically see it. And you can see it more clearly sooner, but what happens is you offered this bonus on your services where you're gonna do this extra thing to sign up clients because you really needed clients. And then that thing, just instead of becoming a bonus, kinda just becomes what you do. So all of a sudden, your profit margins just got smaller, but you didn't track it because it was a bonus thing that you tossed in. Maybe you hired an extra person or paid for another tool set or brought in somebody to do this other thing. And as a result, your profit margins have gotten smaller, but you didn't track it because it was supposed to be a one time project. Now it's kind of an ongoing forever thing. And so it's these little things that happen over time that erode profit margins. And what happens is people usually look at the profitability of something either never or they look in the beginning. when they first create the offer because they're analyzing, is this going to be a profitable offer? And what they don't always track are all of the things that change over time that decrease the profitability of that offer. Or just simply your business expenses are up. You've given people raises, you've hired somebody else on the team to take more off your plate or to do something new. There's all these different things that you can do that can have your expenses continue to skyrocket. And unfortunately, if you're not watching that really carefully, it can mean that not only can cash flow be just a nightmare based on the way that you're selling your offers, but it can become a nightmare because you just simply don't have enough of it coming in when you look at your expense to revenue ratio. So that is a number one sign that somebody is in the messy middle. Number two is that you have a team. Usually by the time you're in the messy middle, you have a team. Doesn't mean you have a big team, but you have people who support you because realistically, you can't be scaling if you're doing everything yourself. So you have people that support you, which is good. But even with that, you tend to find that there is way too much still dependent on you. You're still making a lot of the decisions. You're still giving a lot of the direction. You're still the go-to person to solve a lot of problems. And you really are much more trapped in the day-to-day operations or in doing things that are outside of the core things that you want to be doing and outside your core zone of genius and passion. Now, another sign is that maybe you've invested in systems or you've invested in tools. Maybe you've created some processes or some SOPs. There may be work that you've put into those things already because if you're in a place of the messy middle, you probably have already recognized those things are important to get there. But even though you have them, things still feel really complex. Things feel very inefficient. Things are fragmented. You've got a lot of different pieces that kind of don't talk to one another or don't connect easily. And it's usually maintaining quality much more challenging. And quality could be client experience. It could be the way you onboard somebody. It could be the way that you manage a client and their results over time. It could be a team member. It could be the way you hire, the way you onboard, the way you uplevel your team, right? It's just the things that you're doing, the quality of the experience that you're providing, whether it's for your internal team or whether it's for clients, you have to jump through a lot of hoops and do a lot of things to get things working right. And it can be really frustrating because you're like, I don't understand. I created this process or I created this system or I got this tool. Isn't this supposed to make it better? And instead, sometimes you end up in a place where you're doing more heroics behind the scenes to try to get things to actually work well so quality and experience aren't impacted negatively. Now, another one is if you've broken through some big revenue milestones, maybe it was multi six figures, maybe it was seven figures, multi seven figures. So you've hit these milestones and you probably had some expectations going in about what would happen when you hit those milestones. And instead, you find that you're not at the stage that you would expect when it comes to predictability or stability. Things aren't stable in the business. Things are still a bit unpredictable and chaotic. You still may be on a bit of a revenue roller coaster, where you may be in a place where you set goals, you set financial targets, you set plans, and it's a whole lot of like, fingers crossed, really hope we make it, and you don't always make it. Or it is, again, just so many heroics that need to happen in order to get those results. So there is no real predictability or stability, and you're certainly, if you are having any semblance of that, usually not getting there within the capacity that everybody wants to be working. Usually people are way overworking, including yourself. And then one of the other characteristics is things feel a bit fragile. So if you stepped away, if you completely stepped away from the business unexpectedly, or you were gone for too long a period of time, you know that things would slow down, things would start to break down. Maybe you don't even feel like you could step away at all. But if you did, you know that things would be impacted. So I could go on and on and on about signs of the messy middle, but I wanted to call these out because I think these are some of the most recognizable ones and some of the ones I see my clients struggling with the most when they come to me. And so another trap that keeps businesses in the messy middle longer than they need to is following that more is more advice. I see a lot of people focused on, I just need to sell more. I just need to sell more. And unfortunately, yes, that sounds logical on the surface. And if you do have a highly profitable offer, you do have a scalable offer, yes, you want to sell as much of that as possible. But you want to make sure that both of those things are true, that your offer is actually profitable and in the profit margins that you want and that will sustain the business, and that your offer is actually scalable. It is not uncommon that I start working with a business when I'm helping them scale and we look at their offer and I say, we can't scale this the way that it is. We need to change the way you're packaging this. We need to change the way you're delivering this. We might need to change the way they're pricing it. We frequently do, because if they sold more of it or if they sold the volume of it that they wanted, they'd probably put themselves out of business. It would be unsustainable, but sometimes their profit margins are so small that they don't want to actually sell more and more of it. A lot of times people get caught up in the top line revenue thinking, well, if I could just bring in an extra $100,000 here, or if I could just bring in an extra $1 million here, or if I could just do this, then with that money, I could go do this. But what they're not thinking of is the behind the scenes expenses. For example, let's say a business has $50,000 in debt and they're thinking, okay, I've got this launch coming up. If I can just have enough people pay in full that I bring in 50K cash, I'm going to be all set. I can pay down this debt. It's going to be great. And that's how so many business owners think. And it's kind of logical. You're like, okay, this much money just hit the bank account. Fantastic. This is my debt. I'm going to pay it off. I'm starting from scratch. Amazing. Let's go. But behind that, if they had another $50,000 worth of expenses, or worse, they had $60,000 worth of expenses, they're right back where they started from. Something else that I hear often that I think can keep people in the messy middle and super frustrated and sometimes daydreaming of the days when they had a smaller, simpler business is more team. You just need to hire more people. And a lot of the team structures, a lot of the roles, a lot of the things that I hear people recommend to scaling businesses is very bloated. The business actually doesn't need all those people. It needs specific roles. It may be hiring multiple people to do something that actually should be done by one person. And it's not because you're having that one person wear too many hats. It's because a lot of those things didn't need to be done by a person at all. Either they weren't needed to move the business forward. There's pieces of it that could have been done in a more automated way, leveraging AI. There's things that could have been systematized and simplified and streamlined down where the number of steps that were required really get minimized. And so often people are just so overworked and so busy that they're like, I can't do anymore. I'm going to just hire somebody. And they don't have the time to really think through and look at and say, am I hiring someone for something that needs to be done at all? Or am I hiring someone for something that needs to be done by a human at all? Do I actually have the right skills and the right number of people on my team or the right ability on my team? I just might need to invest in someone's development and training and I can actually get by with a much smaller team. That's why I teach the Lean Dream Team. I truly believe that what you need is what you need. You don't need anything more. And what happens is people want to get themselves out of the day to day so badly that they go off and they hire people who are doing things only to realize that, oh, I hired somebody who needs to be told exactly what to do. Well, if I'm telling them exactly what to do and checking everything that they're doing and fixing everything that they're doing, I've actually created somewhat more work for myself. Okay, I'm going to go out and hire somebody to manage them. And so they hire somebody to manage them. And then what ends up happening is they have to tell the manager what to do. So they're investing a ton of time in bringing this person in more of a management role up to speed with the hopes that that person can then tell the other person what to do or the other people what to do so they don't have to. And sometimes they realize they didn't hire someone at the right level, so then they bring in someone else to manage the managers who can then manage the people. And it creates this hierarchy and this org structure that can feel really good from an ego perspective because you're at the top of this big company and you've got managers and teams and managers of managers and teams. And it can feel very like, hey, look at my business. And at the end of the day, it is so expensive. It is so complex. And in most cases, it is so unnecessary. More team does not equal more freedom, unfortunately. Sometimes it actually creates more dependency on you instead of less, especially based on the way that you structure your team. So I am such a big believer in Lean Dream Team. In my CSOO certification, that's one of the things I certify people in is how to architect a Lean Dream Team because so much of the advice that's out there is really not good advice whatsoever. It's taken from corporations and somebody tried to right size it to small business and kind of missed what a small business really needs. And speaking of team, A lot of times you hire a team, but you find that at the end of the day, you're still making a lot of the decisions, you're still giving a lot of the direction. And I don't mean setting vision, I mean direction as in do this, go do that, we need to do this right now kind of things. You're giving direction much closer to the work surface instead of staying at more of that vision strategy level. And a lot of times you're still really involved in delivery. Clients just want you, they just want to work with you. You are so integral to the process in places that you don't need to be, that it not only does keep you trapped in the day to day, but what you end up having is a business that's very CEO centric. It's a business that is inadvertently actually built around you. And because it is built so deeply around you, it becomes harder to extract yourself from the day to day. It's possible. And it's possible with the right systems, with the right team, with the right structure, with a lot of really intentional actions that you do over a period of time. But if you have a highly CEO centric business, you tend to stay in the messy middle longer than if you don't. And what you often find is that you become the ceiling in the business. Everyone always talks about CEO as bottleneck. Yes, absolutely fine. But to me, I look at your business as what are your growth or scaling ceilings? Every business has them, right? Maybe in your offer, you can only serve so many people and that becomes your ceiling. Maybe when you look at your tech and your tools, you can only serve so many people and that becomes your ceiling. Maybe when you look at your business model, you can see where your ceilings are. And so there's lots of different ways to break through ceilings and continue to move ceilings so you can be more scalable. But the hardest ceiling to break through is the one when you are the ceiling. You only have so much time. And a lot of times when I talk to people, they've already gotten so much of the day to day of the operational pieces of things, the things that really are outside their zone of genius, that sort of stuff off of their plate. Yet they're still so trapped into their business and they feel like they can't take time away. And it's because they're the one who does all the business development. They're the ones who are a key part of the sales process, or they're the ones who are a key part of the delivery process. And I'm not talking about showing up for an hour a week to deliver a group program. I'm talking about still working really closely with the clients or super integrated into so much of what happens with the clients that it's hard to step away because the clients just want you instead of trusting in the rest of the team. So that CEO centricity really does require focus and focus intentionality to break some of that dependency outside of just hiring more people and putting more systems in place. Those are key to it, but there's more that needs to be done. So the other thing that I see is that people are using scaling as a way to solve problems. Scaling does not solve problems. Scaling amplifies what you already have. Scaling is an amplifier and it is an equal opportunity amplifier. If you have things that are going exceptionally well in your business, it will amplify those. If you have a whole lot of problems and issues in your business, it will amplify that as well. Scaling does not solve problems. Scaling amplifies what you already have, good or bad. And if you take anything away from this episode, that is the one thing I would love for you to take away and remind yourself of. This is why I am so passionate about businesses simplifying before they scale, or if you are already scaling, there is no better time to simplify than today. You want to simplify and streamline, and you want to lean out, get rid of all of the things that are unnecessary so you can scale the things that actually matter, and you are not inadvertently scaling noise and complexity and issues and overwork and overwhelm and cash flow challenges and all of the things. Again, scaling amplifies what you already have. So, are you in a place where you want to amplify what you already have? And if you are not, what do you not want to amplify? If you look at your day to day, if you look at what you do, if you look at your results and you ask yourself, what of these things do I want to amplify and what of these things do I not want to amplify? The things you do not want to amplify, that's your indicator of where you want to make some changes in your business, where it would be really valuable to be investing some time in your business. Look at how you can lean those things out and either eliminate them entirely or make those small changes so that you're getting much better results and you're getting the results that you want. At the end of the day, you want to make sure that what you're scaling is your profit and your impact. You do not want to be scaling all that noise and complexity and chaos. And so that is where simplifying before you scale, or at least simplifying as you're scaling, comes into play and is really, really critical. You don't wait to scale to simplify, like, oh, once I scale, I will simplify. No, no, you simplify first. Otherwise, you are keeping yourself in the messy middle for so much longer than you need to be there. All right. So if you are in the messy middle, we talked about what that looks like. We talked about what not to do, some of the myths. Now let's talk about what to do. So this is probably going to be no surprise to you, but what you should do is SPSDI, strategy, planning, systems, team, and insight. I'm not going to go deep into this because I talk about it in so many of the episodes on this podcast. But at the end of the day, what you want is to build your ecosystem to be able to scale in a simple, sustainable way. That really is rooted in your strategy, your planning, your systems, your team, and your insight. Those are really, really critical for that. So every business needs to tune all 5 of these areas over time. You are always up-leveling your strategy. Over time, you should be refining your business model and your offer suite. That might be something you need to do now if you find that your offers are not converting the way that you want to, or if you know that your profitability is not where you really want it to be. But you're always refining your strategies. You are always consistently doing planning in your business. You always want to be looking at how you can successfully run your business while growing your business while delivering an exceptional client experience. So, planning is something that is ongoing that you do consistently, that you always want to be refining and improving upon. A lot of times to get through the other side of the messy middle, you might need to tighten your strategy. You might need to tighten your planning or implement if you don't yet have a good solid planning practice, put one in place. But a lot of times it's systems and team that are going to get you on the other side of the messy middle. So, one of the things that I have found is when businesses are in that messy middle stage, a lot of times the founder does not have the right hand person to support them. They might have a great team. They don't always have the right team, or they don't always have the right people in the right roles. And I think one of the most critical roles that you can hire for, or one of the most critical roles that you can develop within your team, if you have somebody who's capable, is somebody who understands how to scale your business, and someone who can take that vision and the strategies that you have and be the bridge between those and the execution and day-to-day actions that your team does. That is truly one of the only ways that you're going to get yourself out of the day-to-day is you need that bridge between vision and strategy and execution. And what that looks like to me is either a CSOO, Chief Strategy and Operating Officer, or an SOM, a Scalable Ops Manager. And it really depends on where you are on your scaling journey, which one of those you need, or in some cases, you eventually will need both. You want that person who's your strategic right hand thinking partner, who understands all of the different puzzle pieces of the business, who knows what needs to happen when, who can really almost be an extension of you so that you can shift your focus to other things. That's when you need a CSOO. And if you need that person closer to the day to day, closer to the one who's managing the team and managing the systems and managing the projects, and the one who's really bridging between the strategies that have been set and the work that needs to happen, then you need an SOM, a scalable ops manager. The key in both of these roles, and why I recommend these over some of the other roles that people tend to hire for, is that they understand how to scale. They understand how to build the scaling ecosystem. They aren't creating just a bunch of SOPs or putting together one-off systems. They actually understand the full ecosystem that your business needs for scaling. And what I find is that founders either will take this on themselves if they don't yet have that person because they get how critical and how important it is, and how by taking some of these steps, they're able to actually be able to hire the right hand person. Or others will just hire someone who has the skill to be able to bring it onto the team to do it for them or to be able to do it together. And so any way you look at it, what your business needs to move through the messy middle and to be able to scale to wherever you want to take it is strategy, planning, systems, team, and insight. That is what your business needs. The question is, who is the one that's focused on that right now? Is it you, or do you want to find the right-hand person who can support you through that? If you have a rock star on your team that you know is capable but maybe doesn't have the skill, send them to me. Send them to Strategic Ops Institute. We will train and certify them and give them the entire lean scaling ecosystem to go and install in your business. And if you don't yet have that person, but you know you need to find them, just put time on my calendar and I'll try to understand some of what you need. And I'm happy to connect you with one of the incredible people who's gone through my training and certification programs, who's looking to work with businesses like yours. And if you don't yet have someone and you know you're not yet ready to hire someone, but you recognize how critical this is, put yourself through the training and certification program. Because not only will they help you in your own business, but they will help you with whatever work you do with your clients, especially if you deliver services or you're a coach or consultant. In any case, just go to strategicopsinstitute.com/consult, put time on my calendar if you'd like any support with this. Because at the end of the day, if you want to move through that messy middle, if you want to make it less messy, if you want to get on the other side of it much more quickly, the key to doing so is making sure you've got the right strategies, planning, systems, team, and insight in place. And while you don't need to focus on all 5 areas at once, you want to just pick one, make the adjustments, and use that as leverage to move on to the next area and then the next and then the next. This is something that you are going to do over and over again on repeat in your business. So make sure that you are investing in it, whether that is rolling up your sleeves and putting in your own time, or whether that's finding the right person to support you through it. And if you want the opportunity to ask me questions or to dig a little bit deeper into what I actually recommend you do with SPSDI, you can join me for my Scale Smarter workshop. Right now, it's completely free. It's strategicopsinstitute.com/scale smarter. Go ahead and get registered, and I walk you through some of the strategies that I recommend you get started with. I hope you got a lot of value out of this episode. I will see you again next week. Thanks so much for tuning in to this week's episode. If you have not yet taken our scalability assessment, I invite you to head to leanoutmethod.com/assessment and take our interactive assessment that's going to help you look at how simple, how sustainable, and how scalable your business currently is. It includes personalized recommendations of where to focus next to get your time back, to increase your impact, increase your profits, and ultimately step into your rich, fulfilled life. And finally, we'd love to see you inside our signature program, Simplify to Scale. You can head to leanoutmethod.com/ops to find all of the details on how we can help you uplevel your operations and get out of the day-to-day of your business.